Hi, my name's Chris Myers from Smug. I've tried most ultrasound machines on the market and I'm really excited today to give you my feedback on the GE Vscan Air. So this is a handheld ultrasound machine. Let's be honest, handheld machines have gained their popularity because they are cheaper than most ultrasound machines. So they've become very, very popular. And I'm going to let you know exactly what I think of this machine and particularly who should buy one and who shouldn't buy one. So who should buy a Vscan Air? Well, look, I'm pretty biased towards having a really good image quality because for somebody that's been scanning a long period of time, I want the best image quality that basically I can get. And that generally means I've got to spend as much money as I can to get that good image quality. However, who should buy it? So I'll give you some examples of people I know who have bought it and have found it a very useful purchase. So the first group of people are the people that are traveling a lot with sports teams and they are using it as part of a team. So they've got multiple logons and they can all see each other's scans. And they're on team buses, they're in hotels, and obviously all they need to do is pack their Vscan Air. So from a portability point of view, some people have favoured that. Now, when they go back to their clinics or when they go back to their football clubs, they're not using these all the time. They've then got their bigger cart-based or their portable machine that they're using in the club. The second group of people, which is probably the biggest group of people, and without being, too crass about it, is people that can't afford a more expensive machine. So they're just getting started in ultrasound. And they obviously need to buy a machine to get started and to practice. So people are buying these as their first machine. And I think that's absolutely amazing that they're getting a good image quality for a relatively cheap price. But as I say in lots of my articles on my website, you pay for what you get. And if you buy cheap, you buy twice. So everybody I know, or many of the people that I know that have bought a Vscan Air, have used this as their sort of entrance onto ultrasound. And then probably some people have sold them after a year or after 2 to 3 years. You're definitely going to be looking for something with better image quality, particularly at that depth. And the other group of people that I've seen buy it are people that are, again, still in that training phase, and they may have access to a machine on a Monday and a Tuesday, but they're not getting enough access to get enough practice. And we know you need practice to get good at this. So they're just getting a Vscan Air as well to give them that ability to maybe practice at home, practice on family and friends, but also get more access to an ultrasound machine because their access is limited. So there's a few examples of people that have bought it. So what does the Vscan Air cost? Well, in the UK, it's about £3,950 plus VAT, obviously, so just under £4,000. There's no ongoing costs, so there's no subscription costs, whereas some of the handheld machines, for example, Clarius, I think it's around £500 a year on top of the cost of the machine. So you just need to bear these things in mind when you're thinking about what to buy. If there are any upgrades that GE do, then they say that will be for free. You get your 3-year warranty, which is obviously good, but you would expect that with a brand new machine. And then I did mention that you can also get a cloud storage system, which is sometimes called Digital Tools, as like an add-on. And that's £399 for 1 year and £1,049 for 3 years, and assuming that is plus VAT. So it's a little bit under £4,000 for the Vscan Air. Looks pretty cool, doesn't it? So this is the box. It could be something made by Apple. It's got a great design. It fits very nicely into that box. And, well, this is basically it. As you can see, it's got 2 probes. It's got the Convex probe, which is 2 to 5 megahertz. It's also got the linear probe, which is obviously mainly what we're going to use for MSK. You may occasionally use this for scanning something deeper, maybe like a hip or a proximal hamstring or gluteal region, such as piriformis. And this is 3 to 12 megahertz. It's really quite light. It's 205 grams and it's 131 millimeters by 64 millimeters across the top. So it's actually thinner than that down this end. As I say, it's obviously very portable. It's extremely light. It feels like a normal ultrasound probe. I use a GE machine, and it feels just like the 3-12 on the Logic. It's small. If you're wearing scrubs, you can fit it into your pocket, which looks pretty cool. It's waterproof. Not sure why it'd be near water, but it is waterproof. And it is drop tested, military drop tested, which means that I won't, drop it from 1.2 meters, and fingers crossed those crystals don't break. It does come with a 3-year warranty, which is pretty good. My first impression is that this is an incredibly cool bit of technology. It's amazing what they fit into such a small space. It's light, it's portable, it's very easy to use, and we're going to come on to that next. Basically, there's just one button. So the Vscan Air charges with this charging mat. So all you need to do is just place the probe in between scanning patients back onto the mat, and you can see it comes up with this sort of yellow-orange color, which means that it's charging. It will last for around 50 minutes of continuing scanning. About 20% of that can be color Doppler, but you must remember in between your patients to pop it back onto the mat. Otherwise, quite quickly, you may find that you're running out of battery. So the Vscan Air is compatible with both iOS and Android, which is great. Now, in terms of storage, it will be limited by the capacity of the device that you're using it on. But generally speaking, most of these things are going to they're saved via the app on your device, but it will depend on how big the device is and what capacity it has for storage as to how much you can store. But on the app, you get 1 gigabyte of storage. So that's around 200 videos and 2,000 images. Now, if you're going to be using this quite a bit, you will soon run out of storage, and you either will have to delete them and back them up by exporting them, which we will talk about in a bit, or what GE do have now, which they've just brought out, is what they call digital tools, which is a cloud storage system and a sharing solution. So basically, you can get like a pack system. It can link to DICOM, which is where you store all of your images. Instead of being on that device, they would be in the cloud, which I would suggest is more secure. And obviously, if you're going to need to keep these images for many, many years, which you will from a medical legal point of view, then it's really good to have a very robust storage system in place. But as well as that cloud storage, you also get these sharing solutions. Now, for some people, this will be useful, and for some people, it won't be. So basically, what you can have is you can share in real time your screen with other practitioners who can give you feedback on your scan. So that can be quite useful from a training point of view, but also they can all be connected together. So for example, if you work in a football team, say you've got 4 Vscan Airs, then they can all be connected, and maybe your medical director overviews those scans, which could be quite useful from an auditing point of view. So there's a couple of options that are available for you there. And you can have a look on their website, and if you look at their digital tools section with the Vscan Air, then that can be quite helpful. The other thing just to bear in mind that they also now connect this to the GE Sprint. Now the Sprint is a monitor that this connects onto. It looks more like a classic sort of portable ultrasound machine that you might see in a hospital, not cart-based, but more of a portable ultrasound on a trolley. It's got a nice monitor. It's mainly touch screen, and I have tried it. And there's no doubt that when you add that onto the Sprint console, it does appear to give you much better image quality, and it does give you a lot more ability to be able to control some of the parameters that we discussed earlier that you can't necessarily control. So it's another nice option. So for example, if you do work in a football team or you work in a clinic, then you may use this on its own, or you could also connect it up onto your Sprint machine and that allows you to use it as a bit more of a normal looking ultrasound machine, which I think can be quite important, particularly if people are paying quite a lot of money for a scan or for an injection. Then you can pop this onto the Sprint machine, and it will look a bit more like what people would expect from an ultrasound machine. It looks a bit more like a classic medical device. So it's worth having a look into those options if you are interested in getting a Vscan Air. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to connect the Vscan Air up. This has an internal Wi-Fi inside. There's no need to connect to a Wi-Fi in the building that you're in. So you can see we've got the Vscan Air app there. We're just going to turn on the probe, which you will do. You can see it starts to flash. It's got these two LEDs, which are quite helpful to let you know what you're doing. Over here it says add a probe, so I'm adding the probe there. Press next, and then just wait till the Vscan Air appears, and then hopefully that will connect. When blinking, press the button on the probe. Remember, it only has one button, so we can press that. It's very straightforward, and we can just join that Wi-Fi network, which again is inside the Vscan Air. So it's connecting. Battery is low, so I need to charge that. But there you go. This is how it comes up. So this is now on the Convex probe, so you can see that up there. It's very easy to switch between the two, as I'll show you later. So this is the linear. So for MSK, you've got MSK. Some people may use vascular. They're looking for blood clots, small parts, nerves. Obviously, the other areas we won't be using. You can press MSK, and then obviously that goes through to the linear probe here. Okay, so we're just going to place it onto the forearm. So we can see here the radius at the top, which is on the right-hand side, and the ulnar on this inferior side. So let's just have a look at the way of controlling the parameters. The first thing is you can see the depth on the right-hand side, and you can just do a nice sweep with your finger to increase and decrease your depth, which is really easy to do. So that's depth. If you increase your gain and reduce your gain. So that's very simple. Obviously, if you do have gel on your hands, this may get a little bit trickier, which is the same with lots of touch screens. There's no specific focal zone that you can adjust, but you can see this blue arrow on the right-hand side is the focal zone. And so therefore we're trying to we will get the best resolution in the middle of the image. So whatever we're looking at, we would just adjust the depth appropriately to be able to get the best resolution we can. So that's the gain and the depth. There is no frequency that you're going to change. That will just alter automatically dependent on your depth. I do like to be able to change the frequency, but that isn't something that you can do on here. It's got all your basic features, so you can freeze, you can even play a video back, and you can change that on the configuration as to how long that video is. You can obviously unfreeze, freeze, and you can save images, and I'll show you later where that goes. You could also freeze, and you can also do some measurements, which are quite nice and easy to do. Again, if you've got gel on your hand, it might be a little bit more difficult, but these are nice large sort of cursors to move around. You can pop some arrows on, and there's a few different things that you can do there. The other thing you'll see is this little button here. So you can do, it does have color Doppler here, and it has pulse shortwave. It doesn't have power Doppler, so it might not be quite so sensitive as some of the other machines that have got power Doppler, but certainly this can be very useful in MSK to have the color Doppler, and you can change the size of the box really nicely using the touchscreen function. Okay, so we can take that off. Now, if you're going to change between the probes, then top left, you can see here it's very easy to use. So I could use the MSK. Obviously, I wouldn't use this for the forearm, but you can see here you can use the curve, which you might use for a hip, which we will have a go at later on in the demonstration. So it's really easy to change between the two probes. Obviously, I only do MSK You do have a nerve setting as well and small parts. And sometimes you might get better images using those. So we'll just pop it back to there. Now, if we go top left, you've also got your settings here. One thing that you might want to be aware of is if you just look at your configuration, you can put your TGC on, you can take the focus marker on and off, and there's a few things you can do here in changing the freeze time, this video duration, as you can see here. So you certainly can change some of the parameters, but overall there's an awful lot that the machine does for you that you can't change. A bit like, it's very much something that is very useful for people that are starting because it is quite simple. But as you get better at scanning, actually things like dynamic range, which you can't alter on the on this machine, it does, and frequency, obviously, it does become quite nice to be able to alter that just to really optimize the image. Once you've stored your images, you can see on the top right-hand corner, we can go on to our saved images. So just pop in the password. And here's our images here. So for example, if I select exam 57, you can obviously edit the patient details there for us. If we just select, it's just a random, and we look, and down here we can see share. So share with other apps. So this is where it's quite useful. And it will anonymize those images as well. So when I've been doing it, I've been using AirDrop because I use Apple, and I can get that very quickly onto my MacBook. You can also save it onto some shared albums in your photos, but you can also save it into files. So this is a really easy way of exporting your images, particularly if you're doing a postgraduate certificate or some sort of education or a logbook, or you're doing an audit. This can make it really easy to share. And obviously, if you do purchase the GE cloud storage system, which obviously does cost more, as we have and will discuss, then obviously that can be shared with other people on the network, and you can get immediate feedback on that. So this is a really easy way of getting images off the system. If I was using this in clinic, then obviously I've got a stand which is useful to pop it onto a table, or you can also get a stand which has a flexible wire on that you can put onto the edge of the couch or onto the edge of a desk or a table. The other thing you can do, what I would recommend, is get this connected, using Apple TV or another way of connecting it onto a big screen in your clinic, because I think that looks really good in front of patients. But just be aware, if you look at these images on a phone, they look really, really good. Put it onto an iPad, and I would also suggest, if you're going to use an iPad or some other tablet, that you do get quite a big one. But just be aware, particularly when you put it onto bigger screens, you do lose some of that resolution and it can look quite grainy. So you just need to be aware of that. But certainly putting it onto a bigger screen can be useful, and that can be helpful for particularly if you're trying to demonstrate some pathology or some changes to a patient. So let's first of all have a look at the median nerve. So we can see the median nerve in the middle there. So this gives you an idea of the resolution, which is pretty good. It's obviously not as good as the more expensive cart-based machines. You can certainly see the fascicles there within the median nerve as it comes more superficial. Now let's have a look at that in long section. So it's nice, easy probe to maneuver. It's one thing I do like about it. It does feel like the real thing. You see there, as I spin, I can spin onto the median nerve, which looks nice. It gives you a nice image. You'd certainly be able to measure that, and you can see the muscles around that. If we then have a look at the extensor tendons, so we can see that's the radius, that's the ulna. So we're just going to spin that round, make a bit more sense, radius and ulna, and then we can see those tendons forming. And we can also come back up into the forearm and you can see the muscles. So this gives you an idea of the resolution of the machine. And certainly this is a superficial structure. So we're looking at, 1 to 2 centimeters. So we would expect a pretty good image here, because if it's struggling at this depth, then it's not going to be very good with the structures that are a bit deeper. So let's have a look at one of those tendons in long section. So you can see it there at the top. So you really can get an idea of these tendons. It's certainly not as good as the cart-based machines. There's a nice picture of my joint. You see the radius, capitate on the right, lunate in the middle, and radius on the left there. So again, that gives you an idea. You can see the tendon on the top, and you can follow it up. That just gives you an idea of the image quality and what we can see. Now let's have a look at the patella tendon. Whenever you look on the websites of these handheld machines, you always see the patella tendon being demonstrated. It's a superficial structure, and if it can't see this well, then it's going to be pretty hopeless. So you can see here the distal tibial tuberosity. You can see the patella tendon. You get a nice resolution of that fibular pattern of that patella tendon. This is a completely normal looking patella tendon, and you can see it's actually giving us a really nice image. If we then just go in a transverse section, we can see the tendon in transverse going up onto the bone. You'd be able to see a tear, you'd be able to see tendinopathy, you'd be able to see calcification. So does this machine give me the diagnostic image quality that I need to diagnose a patella tendinopathy? Of course it does. And you can see it really nicely there. Nice superficial structure. Using the high frequency linear probe gives you a nice image quality. Right, let's have a look at the Achilles. Again, very superficial structure. We would expect to get a really nice image here. You can see at the top there the Achilles. You can see the soleus muscle coming off, and then you can see the brighter Chagas fat pad. And underneath, actually, we're getting a really nice picture of FHL. If you just wiggle your toe, you can see FHL there. And then you can keep coming down. If we just stretch that tendon a little bit more, get a little bit more gel contact there. Let's fill that in. And then we can see the Achilles tendon going onto the bone there. And you can actually see the back of the subtalar joint there. And actually quite nicely, you can see the talar crural joint. So it does give us a nice image there. And you can see a little bit deeper than I thought we might be able to there. So then we can have a look at the Achilles in transverse section. There it is as it forms into the free tendon, soleus ends. And then as we come down, you can see Chagas fat pad. That's the Achilles at the top. We'll just drop that. Make the depth a little bit more superficial, so just blow it up so you can see it nicely there, and that's the Achilles. We're getting nice resolution of the Achilles, but again, I would expect that, and these handheld machines do perform very well in these superficial structures, so if you want to be able to scan the Achilles tendon, the patella tendon, then this certainly does the job. Now, let's have a look at the plantar fascia, because obviously the plantar fascia is normally slightly trickier to scan, and you can see here, you can see the calcaneum. I'll be interested to see how it gets through that fat pad and obviously the hard bit of the hard skin. You can see I'm not getting a great image lower on. I'm just towing down the probe, healing down the probe. We can see it a little bit better. Let's just increase. And there actually you can see by increasing the gain, you can see that I am getting quite a nice picture of the plantar fascia. Would that give me the information that I need diagnostically? Yes, I think it would. But I certainly know if I'm on my Logic E or on an E10, I'm going to get a much better image than that. But certainly it does give us some of that information that we need. And actually in this case, you can see there's a bit of a thickening in that plantar fascia. So I have been able to make that diagnosis with this image quality. But remember, I'm good at ultrasound. You may struggle, and you will struggle, if you're using a handheld machine and you're starting out on ultrasound. So let's have a look at supraspinatus in transverse section. So this patient has a very thin fat layer, so we would expect to get a good image. So we can see the long head of biceps on that left side of the screen. We come round and we do a transverse image of supraspinatus. And you can see that we are getting a nice image of this supraspinatus tendon, and you can see the bursa and the deltoid. And I would be confident with that diagnostic information to be able to diagnose a full thickness tear. Now it may be, because it is quite a grainy picture and the resolution is not as good as, for example, a more expensive machine, Would I struggle to look for a small partial thickness tear? Well, in this specimen, I don't think I would. But if somebody had more muscle or more fat, then I may. If we then go into a long section, we can see the greater tuberosity on the right, and we can see that nice fibrillar pattern of the supraspinatus. Now, I just want to show you a slightly deeper part of the shoulder, because what we do find is that as the depth increases, we do sometimes find that the image is a little bit poorer. So what we can do is we can actually just increase the gain a little bit, and you can see the humeral head, you can see the infraspinatus tendon. There it is attaching in as we go laterally. But you can see that it does struggle a little bit to see that glenoid labrum, which is around 2.5–3 centimetres. Okay, so let's have a look at some muscle scanning. So we're at the quadriceps here. Here you can see the rectus femoris muscle in the middle. You've got the fat layer on top, and underneath it you can see the intermedius, and then you've got the femur. So just have a look at this image now. If you are going to look at buying a machine and you really want to get an idea of the image quality, it's really good to compare one with the other in the same room, but I know that can be quite difficult. So if we spin into long section, you can see that nice fibrillar structure of the muscle, and you can see the bone underneath, and we're getting a nice image. I'm just going to increase my gain a little bit, which is really easy to do with that touch screen. And I'm just going to change the depth. So we've got the bone at the bottom, and then we've got the two layers of the intermedius, the rec fem, and then we've got the fat layer at the top. And obviously, we can just slide that up and down. And I would be very confident about seeing a significant hematoma or muscle tear using this machine. I'm definitely not getting that spatial resolution that I would expect with more expensive machines, and therefore seeing a more subtle injury may actually be a little bit tricky. But overall, I'm happy with that. But I do have a patient who is a young patient with good musculature, not a lot of fat, and that obviously, if any of those were slightly different, then the image may be compromised. If we just go into the picture here, we can see the central tendon really nicely in the middle there, and we can follow that up. Now, I do want to have a look at the actual hip joint, because obviously that is a deeper structure. So as we go up, we can see the femur, you can see the psoas tendon, you can see the femoral artery pulsing away there. Now, let's have a look at it in long section. We're actually getting a really nice image here again. And as we follow down, I'm just going to make that, I'm going to look for the neck of the femur, because obviously this is where we do the injections. And so I just want to see how well I can see that head-neck junction. And I'm getting a nice image there. We can see the circumflex artery, and you can see there's some thickening of the capsule there. But overall, I'm getting a nice image there, and I would be happy to do a guided injection there, because I think I've got a good picture of the target. We will compare that to the Convex in a minute. So on this specimen, we are getting a nice image of the hip joint. You can see the psoas tendon on top. So let's go straight now to the lower frequency probe, which is obviously the Convex probe, and we can do exactly the same thing. Now, I don't have a Convex probe in my clinic, so I'm not used to using it too often. So this is really quite interesting for me. I'm just going to drop the depth, so it's more superficial. And you can clearly see with the linear probe, which is higher frequency, you're getting much better resolution. It's a lot less grainier with the linear probe when you're looking at that rec fem, and you can see the central tendon there, and we're not getting a good image. But we can see the bone well underneath. But certainly this is a lower frequency probe, and this is not giving me the information that I would like. But I wouldn't be scanning a muscle with a Convex probe anyway. So let's have a look at the hip joint. So there's the hip joint there. We're going to spin on it again, and we're going to have a look at it, and we're just going to toe down our probe. Now, this is where you've got to make sure you're using the right probe, the right frequency for what you're trying to achieve. Because actually, although you can see the tissue above has poorer resolution, so if I was trying to diagnose the soft tissues above, I would struggle. But actually, can you see the femoral head-neck junction is really bright, because obviously it's a lower frequency, and I would be happy to carry out an injection using this probe. So again, it's all about trying to use the right probe to answer the question that you're trying to do, whether it's an injection or from a diagnostic point of view. So what's it like for ultrasound guided injections? Well, I have carried out a couple of injections using the Vscan Air, and I've used it several times on our SMUG 2-day cadaveric ultrasound injection course. And I've used it on lots of cadavers as well. And there is no doubt that for a simple, superficial injection with somebody that doesn't have too much fat and doesn't have too much muscle, the Vscan Air can easily be used to carry out an ultrasound guided injection. So what do I mean by that? So an AC joint, a subacromial bursa, a tennis elbow, a knee joint, an ankle joint, a small toe joint, a small foot. All of these could easily be carried out if you're good at ultrasound guided injections with a Vscan Air. If you're new to it, look, it's quite challenging as it is. So you are going to find it harder with a Vscan Air than if you had a machine that had a better quality image. But in terms of using the probe, it's very easy to maneuver. It's not too heavy, as we've already talked about. It's quite light. So it's nice to use. I personally would not use it on most of the hip joint injections that I do, lateral hip, proximal hamstring, anything in the gluteal region. I think for an intra-articular shoulder, as long as a patient is not overweight and doesn't have too much muscle, then I think you would be able to do it. But again, what you've got to remember is that most people that are buying these are not that skilled in ultrasound. They're using it to get started in ultrasound, and therefore they don't have good ultrasound skills, probe skills, and they're not used to carrying out ultrasound guided injections. So obviously it can get quite difficult if you're quite new to ultrasound and guided injections, if you're using an ultrasound that doesn't give you an amazing image. So there's just a few things to bear in mind. So just to recap, for superficial injections, I'd be comfortable using it, but anything deeper, I would probably want to be using my portable or my cart-based machine. Okay, well, what about comparing it to other handheld machines on the market? Well, I can go through my experience of them. So when the handheld machines first came out, the Philips Lumify was probably the best on the market. That hasn't moved forward for a long time, from my understanding, and therefore the Vscan Air is definitely better than the Philips Lumify. The Vscan Air is also much better than the Butterfly. I think the Butterfly is a really cool bit of technology. Obviously, they're not using crystals. They're using microchips. But the Butterfly is not good for MSK, in my opinion, and certainly it is not as good as the Vscan Air. The closest to the Vscan Air is the Clarius, and I think now we're on the third generation of Clarius. I've only tried the third generation for a short period of time. I do actually have a second generation Clarius, and I can assure you the Vscan Air, for me, is better than the Clarius. One of the main reasons for it is this feels like a normal ultrasound probe, whereas the Clarius is a lot heavier and bigger, and it's not so easy to move, particularly if you've been used to using something lighter. Now, there is the third generation Clarius, which again has stepped up in image quality, which is great. But again, and they've also reduced the size and the weight of it, so everything's going in the right direction. But for me, I am slightly biased towards GE because I use GE machines. I would take the Vscan Air over the Clarius. So in conclusion, hopefully you found this review useful. So look, it's a pretty cool bit of technology. It's small, it's light, it's portable, it's relatively cheap. So it really knocks down some of those walls for people wanting to get started in ultrasound, which is great. We've discussed what groups of people would buy it. Well, who shouldn't buy it? Well, for me, somebody that can afford a more expensive machine. You get what you pay for when it comes to image quality. And image quality, forget how things look. Image quality is the most important thing. The better the image quality, the less likely you are to make a diagnostic error. But obviously, you've also got to develop your probe skills alongside that. So it doesn't matter how good your machine is, if you don't have the adequate motor skills and probe skills, then you're not going to get a great image and you're going to get your diagnosis wrong. And it's the same. You can buy a cheap machine, but actually somebody that scans quite a lot will get a reasonable image out of these machines. But if you're new to scanning, which is what a lot of people will be when you're buying a relatively cheaper machine, such as the Vscan Air, then obviously you've got to bear in mind that it can be a little bit trickier because you haven't got the best image quality you can get. I saw that GE advertise on their website that the Vscan Air gives you crystal clear images. Now, I do have a bit of an issue with that. They do give you crystal clear images for the price that you're paying. Everything is relative. So if you're not used to ultrasound, if you don't know a lot about ultrasound, and most people that buy Vscan Airs are looking for this as their sort of starter ultrasound machine, you're not going to have much of an idea of what a good image is and a bad image. So when you see this advertised on the website, just bear in mind that yes, these are really good images for the amount of money that you're paying for the ultrasound machine. If you enjoyed this video, then you can like it, you can make a comment, and you can also subscribe to our Smug YouTube channel for all of our latest videos. You can also become a member to see our members only videos.